honestly just want to get with my friends and talk about them, their stories, their lives, their challenges, and how they overcame them. I just want to get to know them on a deeper level, and of course we're going to laugh. I mean, that's what we do. But I want them to feel that someone listened. And that's it. This is the Barr Friends Podcast, where it's my space, your story, 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 your story. I am your listening host, Christian Barr, and this is the Barr and Friends Podcast. We have been in talks about this episode for a couple of weeks now, and I am so excited and elated to have this guest on the Barr and Friends Podcast. She's a wife, mother, author, podcaster, podcast coach, coffee enthusiast, and entrepreneur. I am so happy to have this woman make her first debut on the Bar and Friends podcast. And hopefully it won't be her last. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have Jen on the pod today. Jen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Christian?
Girl, I'm great. So for starters, I got to ask you this question.
Okay.
I know that you have a podcast called Java with Jen. Very catchy. I like that.
Thank
I
you.
like that. But we're not even going to touch on that just yet. I just want to know, what is your favorite coffee drink?
Coffee drink, like if I go to Starbucks?
Yes.
Okay, listen. It's depressing how much sugar is in a Starbucks drink. So my options are limited when I go there. But if I was going to splurge, I like the creme brulee with the crunchy stuff on top. The creme brulee is great.
Yes.
Or the
Yes.
pecan praline. Maybe that's the one, but I like them both.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
The caramel brulee. That's a
That's what it
classic.
is.
Yes.
I
for
called it
sure.
creme brulee. It's the caramel brulee. That's exactly what it is. And it's so rich and delicious.
Mm.
It's a fat kid drink.
It is. But I love it. I'm a fan of it
It's
for
so
sure.
good. But I do always get it with oat milk because I'm a little bougie white girl and I can't do dairy so well. So I definitely do the oat milk or soy if I want more protein. So
Oh,
there's
man.
that.
I want to know, what are your focus points this year as far as like your goals, your dreams, your visions, and have you been progressing along with them?
Okay. Do you want my spreadsheet? No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
So my goal, okay, so with my podcast,
Mhm.
it's kind of an ongoing goal, but my current goal, I'm top 1% globally ranked show, but my goal is to hit 0.5%, top 0.5, and to have some of my goal is to be on 50 podcasts this year because over the years I've done my podcasting, I've been on about 27 maybe. And so my goal is to be on 50 this year, which takes some work. You got to pitch yourself to a bunch of people and have a bunch of people. And I would love in my business to cross the 100 grand mark. That'd be awesome and exciting, which I do have a plan for. But yeah, so those are some of my tactical goals, but I'm really excited. Next weekend, I'm going to Dallas. Since you mentioned we're halfway through February, I'm actually going to Dallas to meet with another kingdom business entrepreneur, girlfriend, spirit-filled, awesome woman of God. And we're going to have our own little retreat. I'm going to NRB, which is a big podcasting conference. I've got a number of
Yes.
connections there. Oh, excuse me. Did you hear my stomach growl? And so we're backing that up with a 2 or 3 days of prophetic prayer and seeking the Lord for our businesses for this year. Which is funny because we're almost at the quarter of the way in. So I'm like, we better get a move on, Jesus. And so
Right.
that's what I'm excited. So I'm excited to see what the Lord puts on our radar and highlights and stuff. But yeah, I've got some other changes coming down the pipeline too.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me, what is the word that God has given you and your family for this year, for 2025?
Glad you asked. In December, I asked the Lord for a word. And so my word, he gave me two. It's activation and acceleration.
Ooh.
I know, good stuff, right? But I'll
Uh-huh.
be honest, I didn't totally know what that meant. I mean, I know what the words mean, but I didn't know what the Lord
Right.
meant by it. And so I asked the Lord, but I feel like he demonstrated it for me in that shortly after that, I got the bug to publish my book. And because it was already pretty much ready, just needed some tweaking. And so I published not just one, but two books. I published a devotional that was already ready to publish, but just hadn't put it on Amazon yet. And so I actually not only became an author, I became a two-time author in December. And so I feel like the Lord was showing me that's what activation and acceleration looks like. You're not just jumping in once, you're jumping in twofold from the beginning. So I'm like, I'll take it.
So, friend, we are about to get into one of my favorite segments of the show, and it's called Your Genesis. So, I would just love for you to share your Genesis with the audience.
Brief synopsis.
Okay.
I was a missionary kid growing
All
up,
right.
gave my life to Jesus at 3, scared the hell out of my twin sister. So she gave her life to Jesus at 3. I said, Sarah, if you don't give your heart to Jesus, you're going to die and burn in hell. So you need to give your heart to Jesus as a 3-year-old. So, however I eloquently must have explained that. And so she was my first convert. Or somewhere around 14, because I was not interested in going into missions. It was a little bit of a negative experience. And it had its both, it had positive and negative. So around 14, had an encounter with the Lord at a youth event where I surrendered my life to him. I'd always loved him, always followed him, but didn't understand when people would say, "Oh, I suddenly was filled with a sense of purpose when I gave my." I just didn't understand. I was like, "Lord, are you holding out on me?" And I was in a major place of personal crisis in my 14-year-old world and decided to just surrender my life to the Lord and just let go of control and let go of keeping my life all perfect. And that's when I experienced just the Holy Spirit taking over and the lordship of Christ. So that surrender was really key to feeling that sense of peace and purpose everyone always talked about. And from that moment, I felt the Lord call me into missions at 14, which took me on a path to go on missions trips in high school, which took me to a ministry school in college. The ministry school is where I met my husband over the phone. I worked in a call center and he was on my call list. And actually, as soon as I hung up the phone, we were on the phone for about an hour, our first phone call. And I turned around to my cubicle mate and I looked at her and I said, Natalie, I could marry somebody like that. And then I was like, what am I saying? Oh my gosh, that's so weird. And sure enough, I did. I ended up marrying him. And I thought, based on his voice, that he was a tall, skinny white cowboy because that's how he sounded. He lives in Texas. But no, turns out, and I was very conniving to get a picture of him. You want to hear that story? So I had all these youth pastors on my call list, and I was connecting with Steven, my husband, and I was trying to figure out what the heck does this guy look like? Like, I had no idea. I was trying to decide, should I have a crush on him or not? And so I messaged all my youth pastors, emailed them all, and said, because I was like a PR, it was a relationship based type job. And I said, hey guys, males and females, I need pictures of all y'all to put in my cubicle so I can pray over you every day when I get to work.
I like that.
So I had them all email me their pictures, and a lot of them did. And I put their pictures in my cubicle because, gosh darn it, I was going to have integrity about my conniving. And of
Right.
course, my husband was the last person to send a picture. And when he did, it was like on the internet, this picture of him, like he was like peanut size, way across the room preaching. So I had to like zoom it in. He's all pixely. This is 2001. So our images on our computers weren't so great.
Right.
And he, lo and behold, is this short Indian. And I was like, your voice does not match your face, man. And so, anyways, that was quite a discovery. So I had to decide if I was willing to be serious about someone who was shorter than me, an Indian, which I didn't love the culture. I'm not going to lie. I'd seen a movie growing up that made me put off to the culture. So that was a hurdle I had to jump. The power of movies, right? And so, anyways, our relationship was all long distance over the phone. He proposed on our third time to see each other face to face, and it made for actually a really difficult engagement and marriage. So I don't recommend anyone do it the way that we did it. We were barely standing. But next month we celebrate our 20th. So
Wow.
with God's grace and our resilience and a lot of self-sacrifice, we have survived. So we have 4 teenage boys.
That is awesome. Let me interrupt you real quick because I got to ask you this question. What was the thing that made you say yes to Stephen?
It was just hearing from the Lord. Like I felt like I mean, there was something on his life that I had a high sense of calling and destiny inside of myself. And I knew I couldn't just marry an average person. And that sounds maybe a little bit cocky, but at the same time, it's a sense of awareness of like, I live with purpose. I live with destiny. I'm here on this earth to make an impact and to show up with as much in my hands before the Lord as possible to offer to him. And I don't take that lightly. And so I knew I needed to marry someone who took the calling on his life as seriously as I do. And so I could feel that anointing and that weightiness on him. And I think that was something that my spirit recognized. But, you know, you're a 3-part being, your body, soul, and spirit. And so we were very aligned spiritually, but we were very misaligned in our souls emotionally. We had very different backgrounds. And that's where the complication came in, was just we were unequally yoked in our souls, and I didn't realize being equally yoked really kind of means all 3 levels, not just spiritually.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that is what made some challenges. So the Lord was gracious and merciful, and and we barely survived. But I've learned a whole lot, and I have a whole lot of compassion for people that I probably would have had judgment for before. So, you know, God makes messy things beautiful. From there, we did end up having 4 children, back to back. By the time my oldest, he wasn't quite 6, I had had 4 kids,
Mhm.
and they were all boys. And so now they're all teenagers, which is a lot of fun slash I cry a lot. And they they're very sweet. Like my oldest took me out to coffee on Valentine's Day, which was very sweet of him.
Aw.
And you know, so they have their moments where they melt my heart, and then they have their moments where I want to punch them in the head. So you know, it's a well-rounded life. And anyway,
Yeah.
so we are senior pastors and have been since March. So that's a new venture. We've been pastoring together our entire marriage. We've done everything from youth pastoring to associate to discipleship to missions, all the things. And we have a missions organization as well. And so here I am. And I started my podcast because even though I intentionally married a pastor, I always wanted to marry a pastor. I felt called to preach. I felt like I'm the next generation's Lisa Bevere.
Hey.
And I know, and I had 4 boys, so I'm totally in step, right?
And so, yep,
Um,
yep.
but I couldn't find any pulpits. There was no pulpits. We were always serving under other pastors, and there was never a vacancy in the pulpit. And I didn't get to preach on a Sunday until my husband and I became senior pastors. So we had done ministry together about 19 years before I was able to ever preach on a Sunday. And so marrying a pastor was not the promised land when it comes to me using my preaching gifts. And because of that, somewhere's around year 14, I decided I'm tired of crying, feeling like I'm being left out of my calling.
Come on.
And people don't, for a while, I believed the lie that men or people could get in the way of you fulfilling the call of God on your life. I believed that for about 2 months.
Mhm.
And it was the most depressing 2 months of my life, because I was basically handing my power over to somebody else. And we are never meant to live like that. And so I finally woke up one day and said, you know what? When I stand before the Lord, I'm not going to get to blame anybody. I'm not going to be able to say culture was this or, you know, people were this and I was never invited. You know, the Lord's going to be like, and what'd you do with what I put inside of you? And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to find a way and I'm going to make a podcast. And so that's how I started podcasting back in like 2017. And anyway, so here we are. And now I coach podcasters. It's been a really fun ride. I've met some incredible people.
I as well, I feel like I am called to teach and to preach and to be an impact in this world. And for so many years, Jen, you know, it's been prophesied and I've gotten, you know, words of knowledge. And
Mm.
so, here I am thinking that, oh, well, I'm going to be the next TD Jakes or the next Creflo Dollar or whatever,
Come on.
whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it still can happen. But I begin to realize, just like you did maybe a few years ago, where it's like, wait a minute, it seems like whatever church that I join, it seems like, they want to use my giftings and my talents and my anointing, but it just seems as if they're not really giving me a chance to really, share the word on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is one person that has let me do that, but I just feel like there was no one giving me a shot or a chance to. And
Mhm.
so, just like you, I said, I know that I have a voice for this generation, and I know that I want to encourage and
Yeah.
impact, men and women of God for the glory of the Lord. And
Mhm.
so I was like, you know what? I have a lot of friends that talk way too much. So I'll just call my podcast, the Barr Friends Podcast, and I just have my friends on, and they just talk about their lifestyle. They talk
Mhm.
about their testimonies and stuff like that. And so I figured, you know, I'm not necessarily preaching, but I am talking about Jesus,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it's kind of like we have to make our own avenue, because the
Yeah.
Lord, when we go and see him, we're not going to be like, well, you didn't give me an opportunity,
Yeah.
because for so many years, I thought that, okay, well, this pastor is going to give me the shot or the opportunity or the chance to
Mhm.
shine, and I'm like, man, Lord. But the Lord says, no, like,
Mhm.
it's in you. You
Uh-huh.
create, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
I agree with you. I realized that my thinking was very wrong in that
yeah,
I had some extreme, I don't know if extreme's the right word, but just unbalanced um thinking, as far as I believed that if something was God's will, then he
mhm,
was going to magically make the way,
right,
and as though I didn't have to do anything. That's dumb. Like, I mean, you look at the parable of the talents, the three and the one that buried his talents, and all he did was return to the Lord what he had been, or to the master what he had been given. If just giving back to the Lord what we've been given is faithfulness, then he would have been considered faithful, but it's not. He was called wicked. He was called wicked and lazy. But it was the ones who took a risk. I mean, they went and multiplied what he gave them, meaning they had to take risk. They took a loan from the masters, so they were in debt essentially, and they had to turn it into profit, and they had to multiply it into other people's lives, and that's how they were able to come back with a profit to
right,
hand to the master. And so we're actually called to multiply what God's put on inside of us. And I think, the Lord could have opened doors for me
for
to
sure,
preach, could
for
have,
sure,
but
for
I
sure.
never would have pivoted into podcasting. And now my podcast is listened to, last count, 114 countries. Like, I wouldn't be hitting that many countries preaching from the pulpit at church. I mean, maybe with YouTube, but not really. Our church isn't listened to that widely. And
Right.
so I realized that what oftentimes feels like a backup plan to us becomes even better if the Lord's in it. If he's like, hey, pivot, pivot, pivot. And we tend to default to do what we've always seen done. So I wanted to be Lisa Bevere. You wanted to be TD Jakes. Why? Because that's what our brain recognizes and says, that's the model. That's the model we follow. But guess what? Podcasting wasn't around when I was a kid,
Yep.
or if it was, barely anyone knew about it.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't have even known to dream about that. And so God is always doing something new and creative with each generation. And because of that, a lot of times what feels like a detour, what feels like a closed door, what feels like a backup plan is actually just those detour signs on the road of God getting you where he intended for you to be in the first place that you just didn't know.
Exactly. Exactly. And I had a come to Jesus moment a few months ago when I was just thinking about the whole podcasting arena. And I'm like,
Mhm.
man, like, Lord, like, are you sure that you want me to do this? Like, are you positive? Because I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying the guest. I
Mhm.
love making the graphics and the designs and all that. But I said, but Lord, this just, I'm going to be hitting 40 years old, and I don't, it doesn't make any sense to me. But then
Mhm.
it's like the Lord kind of just like gave me a flashback over my life where I've been doing this all of my life. it just wasn't
Mhm.
recorded. It's like people were
Yeah.
coming to me, having conversations with me, talking to me about their life and
Mhm.
Jesus. And so it's like, okay, Lord, I see you. I can be able to connect the dots now. Like you were using
Mhm.
me even when I was in high school,
Yeah.
just being a listening ear and
Yep.
just having conversation. And so sometimes I just need that encouragement because sometimes well, right now it just seems like, well, Lord, I'm not making any money from podcasting. I'm just doing this
Okay.
because I love you and I love your people and I
Mhm.
just love just the technical things that go along with podcasting.
Mhm.
But this is what I love to do. If I make money, if I don't make money, I love to have conversations with people.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Honestly, that's also how what you just said is part of how even the name of my show came around because Java with Jen was actually reflective of the fact that when we were college pastors, I would sit with our college students, we would drink coffee, and they would talk about their lives, and I would disciple them, I would mentor them and pour into them. And so I was trying to capture that nostalgia, if you will, as well as just that dynamic, which really a lot of my guests that come on the show, I feel like they're pouring into me more than anything.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
learn a lot from them. It's such an honor to have them. But then the hearing God's voice part of the title came from actually just a couple years ago. It drove me crazy that people would come to the show Java with Jen and not know what they were going to get there. People need to know. They need some clarity. And so I was like, man, what if I could only talk about one thing, or if there's one thing I have to achieve in my life before I die, what's that one thing that I must do to feel like I fulfilled the call of God on my life? And I realized for me, it's teaching people to hear God's voice. There's a prophetic mandate on my life. It's just in me. It comes out of me. It always has come out of me ever since I was young. And so I was like, okay, well, that's what we'll make the podcast about because it was already coming out in all the episodes. And so Java with Jen, hearing God's voice for everyday life, is about discipleship, training people to hear God's voice, and they're just conversations, but if you think about it, that's where discipleship happens anyways, is in conversations. So
Exactly. And it's I love what you said because it's so true. I feel like I'm learning so much.
mm,
I'm getting so much impartation, Jen, from the guest.
yes, yeah.
And see, to me, that makes a difference. It's like
Hmm.
you're having a 30 to an hour minute conversation with me,
Hmm.
and you are impacting my life. You are
Yeah.
giving me free game. You're actually being a coach in my life right now because you don't
Yeah.
know what I'm going through behind the
Mhm.
scenes with this podcast and stuff like
Right.
that. And so
Yeah.
that is why, like I say, I don't mind doing this if I don't get paid because it's like it's even with our conversation, it's like it just gives me life.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And just to have some because you're in Texas and I'm in upstate New York, just to
Hmm.
have another sister that's a
Yeah.
part of the kingdom of God that I can be able to reach out to and to have someone, pray with me and just do life with me. It's a
Yeah.
it's a blessing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to encourage those who are listening too, like those things in our lives where God doesn't waste anything. So working at
Mm,
McDonald's on the grill, or working in a 9 to 5 job that you hate, or, doing what you have to do to make ends meet. God is so faithful to order our steps and put in our tool belt, if you will, if we have a heart to learn and you're teachable and you're seeking wisdom in all of it.
right.
He is putting tools in you to help you with the next thing. So in my previous live, this hat says style, and this was from Stitch Fix when I was a stylist for them. I worked in fashion. I styled 9,000 people, and I still don't fully understand what the purpose of that season was, but it was very much the Lord. He opened doors I couldn't have opened. They closed as soon as I walked through them, like just incredible, phenomenal season that I know he was putting tools in my tool belt. And then podcasting. Podcasting has made me better of a preacher, of a communicator,
Yes.
of a host with people, at asking good questions. It's made me more conversational. And then it's helped me to think, like, shape my words quickly, but
Yes.
with intentionality. And
Yes.
so, like, anything you do, you're going to be gaining something from it if you don't spend your time resenting it and complaining about it, because every season God is faithful to order our steps. He will order your steps as long as you're following and listening. He will order your steps. He will make good out of the season that you're in and put tools in your tool belt for the next season, so you are prepared for what is coming, whatever that may be. And so,
Mm, that's
yeah.
so good. You preaching now. That's good. So I got to ask you. I
Uh-huh.
have a few podcasting questions for you.
Sure.
Out of all of your years and out of all of the guests that you have interviewed,
Mhm.
who has to be your favorite guest that you have interviewed so far?
I would say Sean Bowles
Okay.
because I followed his ministry for years and have read his books and frequently point people to his books. Poor guy, he takes a lot of heat online. That's just unfair, but he is precious. I'm in his mentorship community now, and I'm on his leadership team, and he literally we come off of the prophetic trainings with him, and I'm like, Lord, help me to love people like Sean Bowles loves people. He's just so pure-hearted, and he just genuinely, there's so much humility about the way that he continues to pursue the prophetic and doesn't act like he knows everything. He doesn't act like he's arrived. He's like, I'm always learning, I'm always growing, we're all always learning and growing, but he has so much wisdom to offer. So when he had me on his podcast before he came on mine, and I can't even tell you, like, when I got that acceptance letter, I freaked out, screaming and dancing in my living room for like 2 solid minutes just to get all the excited energy out. I was like, I couldn't handle it. So when he came on mine, he is definitely one of my favorite guests, though I have had some incredible guests who have become great friends,
Oh, for
really
sure.
good friends. Yeah.
Now, no one really wants to talk about this next question that I have for you,
What?
but I know that you are willing to, and I'm not wanting you to put this person or people on or to sell
Okay.
them out, but I want to know, like, have there been podcasts where you're like, mm-mm, I'm not even feeling this. I'm not even feeling this conversation. I'm not even feeling this person. And what do you do, I guess, next time to not avoid that type of person, but like, I guess how do you choose?
How do I handle it?
You handle it. Yes.
Okay, I do have some principles for you on this one because I have
Oh,
encountered that a few times.
oh, yes.
There have probably been a handful, not a lot, but a handful of episodes that have been recorded that once I went back, I was unsettled about it. And
Yes.
when I went back to publish, I was like, oh, I just don't feel I can use this.
Yep.
I am a big believer in the concept of, if you have to say no, do it with a spirit of yes. So if
Okay.
I tell someone I can't use this episode, um, I do something to make sure I'm not leaving them empty handed. Because if
Oh,
they were coming to me to be on my show, it's benefiting them by promoting them to my audience. So I find something I can do for them that I'm comfortable with that leaves them with some benefit from having interacted with me, especially because they did the interview. Now, one way that I have mitigated having too many of those situations is I implemented the idea of a pre interview. Um,
yes.
because I have had people come on a pre interview that literally were confusing as heck, boring as heck, just not aligned with my audience. And I learned early on, never promise an interview, never ever.
Yes.
Get
Yes.
to know them first. And so that helps mitigate a lot of it. There was one guy, bless his heart, he was so humble, Pastor Matthew Stevens. He's over the Sandals churches in California, and he is part of those all those big baptisms that happen up the
Yes.
coast.
Yes.
He's got like 30 churches or something. He's crazy, awesome, and very humble. And he came on the show, and unfortunately, he was just in a funk that day, and his interview was depressing. Like, it was really depressing. And so when
Ooh,
I was listening back, I was like, maybe I can edit it and bring out the best. But I remember at the end of the interview, I felt really like depressed, and I was like, okay, I don't know how to use this. And so I reached
yeah.
out to him on Instagram, and I said, Pastor Matt, I'm so sorry, but I care about you enough that I don't think I can use the interview that we did. And I said, maybe it was a really bad day. Maybe you got really bad news. I know you carry a lot. You're a pastor. I said, I want to invite you to re-record with me because I believe in the message of your book. I believe in what you're sharing, but the interview came out really depressing, and I don't think that's your heart. And so I want to extend that invitation. And he was so sweet, and he was like, thank you for caring about me enough to do this. I'd be happy to re-record. So we re-recorded and it was great. Someone else that happened to, and she was really terrible about telling her story, even though that was her whole thing. She was like, I want to impact people through story. And I'm like, cool, she'll be great storyteller. She was a terrible storyteller. And so, or at least in our interview, she was. And so the pre-interview, she did great telling me her story. And then we hit record and all she did was give me summaries and highlights and no details. And so I contacted her and I said, hey, let's do this. I want to set you up for success better. I think I need to ask better questions to really draw out your story. Can we try this again? And she was like, I think I'm just going to move on. I think it's fine. And so she wasn't interested in a re-recording. So you're going to have mixed experiences.
Yeah.
But for me, my heart is, I want to, as a media personality, I want to be someone that even if it didn't go well, they walk away with a positive feeling about me. And I do that by making sure somehow I can leave them with something in their hands. And so that girl who didn't want to re-record, I offered to share her freebie with my email list. I offered to give her some shout outs on social media. And she turned it all down, but at least I was willing and the effort was out there. And so, but I consider my podcast and my listeners like my congregation, and I'm guarded with who I let come on, and they're a reflection of me, and people trust me, and I want to be careful with that trust.
That's good. That's good, because I actually had a similar situation that happened with my homeboy Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And he had such a great story, but the first time that we recorded, it wasn't hitting right. And so I
Yeah.
said, hey man, listen, I definitely want to get your story. And maybe it was me. Maybe I need to ask better questions. But I say, hey, I would love for us to do another recording of it. And he was cool. He was down with it. And so the second time, it was fire. We
Yeah.
laughed, we joked, we talked, we dove more into his testimony. And so I think that if you are just open and honest, but
Yeah.
do it with the spirit of, I'll say yeah, joy,
Mm-hmm.
don't be mean, don't be negative, but just say, hey,
Yeah.
it can be better. So can we please re-record this? And so, yeah, he
Yeah.
was down, and it was a great pod.
That's awesome. Yeah, I try to take responsibility because I realize that as the interviewer, a lot of people think the interviewer doesn't really matter much. Oh, but there is an art to
Yes, it is.
now. And I didn't realize that much until I started having higher tier guests on my show.
Right.
And they were the ones that started telling me, you're really good at this. And I was like, that's encouraging. What am I doing? Like, what is different? I want to teach my students. And
Right.
so they kept calling it out. So then it made me really dig deeper. And I've had co-hosts come on, like my husband, who we just learned it's not his wheelhouse. And so there is an art to it, and asking good questions and navigating what they give you and being able to draw out those deeper waters of their hearts. There's a skill to that, and there is a strategy. And so it makes a big difference.
No, absolutely. And there's this woman that I know. Her name is Molly Trotter. She lives in LA. Shout out to you, Molly. And I was nervous because she comes from the news background, and she's also a speaker as well. And so I was very nervous. But
Mm.
after our podcast, she was like, Christian, you are very engaging. You have the personality for it. Like, good job. I'm like, oh, thanks,
Oh,
Molly.
thank
It's
you.
good. It's no,
Yes.
it's good to hear that, because it's that's when you know that, okay, thank you, Lord, I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
Let's continue to do it. Now I know that not every guest is going to be,
Stellar. Mhm.
stellar, but it's actually, cultivating, or it's actually making it's helping my skills become
Yes.
better. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? So yeah,
Yes.
that's how I see it.
Yes, I tell my students that all the time. I'm like, listen, even when you have a failed episode, like every challenge you encounter is, how can I be better? How can I do this better? What am I meant to learn here? Because you will be constantly I learned something new with every single episode I did for probably my first 100 episodes for sure. But even still, I'm still learning because I still want to do better. I still listen back and go, "Oh, I say like way too much."
Yes, same.
And so, yeah, there's always something to learn.
Yeah, because I actually go back and I'm like, okay, I go back to my past episodes. I'm like, okay, I say like too much, or why do I laugh like that? Ill. So I'm working on just trying to better
Uh-huh.
facilitate or to better,
Yeah.
myself as a podcaster, and so yeah, that's what it is. I want to ask you though,
Uh-huh.
who do you look up to or who do you learn from as far as your like the way that you do your guests, like for example, maybe some people look up to Joe Rogan,
Mhm.
or maybe other people look up to different other podcasters to kind of like lead them into their type of potting. But like, who do
Mhm.
you look up to in the podcasting arena, and yeah, who do you glean from?
I actually gleaned from quite a few. When I got started,
Mhm.
Craig Rochelle, his
Yes.
podcast, yes,
Okay.
his podcast, I copied the formatting of his intro and outro to create a template for my intro and outro, and that's actually the template I use for my students. And so I really liked his. I learn a lot from Amy Porterfield, just listening to her. She's very engaging with her guests. Jenna Kutcher, I like her as well. But I don't honestly feel like there's any one person that I'm particularly trying to emulate, because I also don't want to get inside of a box that takes away from what I bring
Right.
that's unique. But I just constantly am looking for ways to improve. So I have taken some notes from Joe Rogan. I've taken notes from Mel Robbins. And so pretty much
Love, bro.
if
Love.
they're a top tier podcast, I'm paying attention and I'm like, okay, what can I do that is like them?
Whew. Okay. I
Mhm.
love that. So, friend, last podcast question, because I want to get into my fun and friends segment, because I'm
Okay.
excited for that.
Okay.
Um, are there ways to be able to monetize your podcast?
Yes.
Because I think that's where I'm at, and I'm going to go on ahead and just kind of just share where I'm at in this season, where it's like,
Mhm.
okay, I love what I do. I love
Mhm.
my 9 to 5, but a good example with our story, we had to reschedule so many times because I'm working,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
so I really want to get to a point where I want to make this like my full-time gig.
Yeah.
So I just want you kind of just, just share a few tips, if you don't mind, on how can we be able to monetize our podcast.
Sure. Okay, so there's multiple. I think in my digital course I share about 12 different ways that people can
Okay.
monetize. And truth be told, when it comes to something like this, having multiple streams is important. Because for example, I had I think 6 streams of income at one point. I was running ads with Spotify when it was Anchor, and I was running ads with something else. And that I had a number of like automatic income coming in, and then all of those, I think 4 of my 6 streams of income dried up in the same week. And I was like, what just happened?
Ooh.
And I relied on that to pay for a little bit of marketing or maybe resources for my podcast or whatever. And so it just made me realize diversification in streams of income is important. Ecclesiastes actually talks about this.
Mm.
Um, and so, a few ways. You're on YouTube, so that helps. So, when you begin to hit your 1,000 subs and you can start to monetize your channel, that will be one way. Making shorts is a really quicker way to grow your podcast channel. Making sure that they're really enticing. Stories travel really well.
Mhm.
Other than that, you can have a Patreon. If you have a way to make a really juicy membership for people, then a Patreon is a great way to do that and make it really like a membership people want to be a part of. I know with Sean Bowles, he has a membership community, and he's like, "Hey, if you give to the ministry, then you become a partner of the ministry. Then you're welcome to get on a Zoom call with me once a month, where I'll ask questions, or you can ask questions, and we can talk, and I'll pour into you, and da da da." So he makes himself accessible. That's a really cool perk. Like for Sean, someone like that, people want access to him, right? And so that's a really cool perk. So having a Patreon or some kind of membership that is manageable, you don't want to put so many things in it that it bogs you
Mhm.
down, and that the time cost is more than the benefit. But you do want to put as much in there as you can to really benefit people. So I have patrons It's not a ton, but I also haven't put a lot of work into really growing it. So I love my patrons. They've been with me for years. And then you can do sponsors. And so, really, the thing with sponsorships, though, and this is kind of twofold. When your audience gets big, you can have higher paying sponsors come on. But before your audience is big, you might want to do affiliate, which sounds counterproductive because it's like, hey, my audience is small. I'm not going to make much. But if you can become an affiliate for something that pays out a lot of money. So I heard one gentleman has like this outdoor podcast, and he was like, you know what? I like this boat. This boat is a $50,000 boat. I'm going to become an affiliate for them. He makes one sale and he makes $1,500 to $2,000 per sale. Okay, well, then you only need to sell one boat per month, and your podcast listeners is something they're going to love. So if you can become an affiliate of something that's high ticket, that's a quicker way to get some money from it because you don't have to sell a lot of them for it to make a difference.
Right.
The other thing I tell people to do is if you have a business, a coaching business, or some kind of business, that your podcast can be the top of your funnel, the way that people learn about you, the way you build trust with people, and it gets them into your ecosphere. And then as they learn about you, then they want to buy your products or coach with you. That's honestly the number one way to make money from your podcast. And
Mm.
so, yeah, when it comes to sponsors, I've had sponsors come on where I've run, they'll pay me $300 and I'll throw in a commercial for 6 weeks or whatever. That's not a ton. It helps. It does offset some costs. You can go to local businesses and say, hey, my podcast is majority listened to local right now. So why don't I do a commercial for you? You can pay me $150. I'll put it in there for a month, whatever. And so a lot of local business would go for that as well. So those are some ideas.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. As you were
Mhm.
talking, I have one more, I promise, and I'll get you
It's
out of
okay.
here. So I think that I'm at a level where I got, my audio and all of my technical stuff ready.
Mhm.
I think that I want to start doing like, and I know this is the bad term for it, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. I know that you understand where I'm coming from, but it's like I want to start getting more celebrity guests,
Mm.
like a Craig Groeschel or
Mhm.
like a Lecrae or different people that are in the Christian, kingdom.
Yeah.
And my question to you is, what are some ways to
Mhm.
inter sorry, not interview them, but what are some ways to invite them onto your podcast? Like, what if
Yeah.
some people don't have, what if some people don't even look at their DMs? Like,
Right.
should we email them? Like, what is like a professional and proper way to go about that?
Okay, I've heard a few different ways to approach this. One of the best ways is get on their email list, and when they send out a newsletter or an email, reply to it. Because what that does is they're going to pay closer attention to people that are in their community and in their network already.
Hmm.
And by replying to it, you're showing them, hey, I'm already supporting what you do. I'm already a part of your people, and I'm already here. I'm already present. When I got on Sean Bowles' podcast, I did pitch myself to him. And so I found his email. I actually did a Google search and I chose the one that looked like a personal email. And so actually he didn't respond the first time. I had to bump the email, which that is also a key. 70% of your yeses are going to come from your follow-up emails, not your original emails. So you have to be good at following up as well. So there's that.
Okay.
Um, I have also heard that going through their contact us form on their website is a good place because they take that stuff more seriously. And so that's a good place. But what you don't want to do is I get so many pitches that just irritate me to death. And they're like pitches where they're like, hello, Java with Jen podcast, hearing God's voice for everyday life. We just listened to your most recent episode, and they'll pick the most recent episode, they'll copy and paste the entire title. First red flag, well, second red flag. And then they're like, we loved how you were inspiring parents in teaching their children to hear God's voice. So we were wondering if, and I'm like, seriously, ChatGPT, you could have took that from my show description. You didn't listen to the episode. So the problem is don't fake it. People can smell that and you're breaking trust before you even have the chance to build it. That's dumb. So if you're going to pitch yourself to someone, You need it to be someone who you genuinely have a vested interest in. I've been reading your books for 15 years. I share with the people we pastor. I send your books to them all the time. Here's a picture of me reading your book on vacation where I got a word of knowledge for the guy sitting next to me while reading your book about words of knowledge. Like
Wow.
share personal connect points that you have with them. Share about how something they taught changed your life. Share something very personal and emotionally connecting. And that's how you can pull them in, and it's going to make your pitch stand out differently. But you have to be realistic. If your show is at 10,000 downloads, you're not going to get, most likely, unless apart from a miracle from the Lord, you're not going to get some top tier podcaster or
Right.
celebrity to come on. Now, let me say that with a caveat. Have a prayer team that prays for you, because it was my eighth episode. So I probably had, I don't know, 500 downloads, very, very low. And I said, I want to have a celebrity on my show. And so I reached out to my prayer team, my intercessors, and I said, can y'all start praying? I want to have a celebrity on my show. And so they said, okay. So I get on Instagram and I'm scrolling through the stories, and I follow Manuel Reyes, who is the husband of Bonquiqui,
Yes.
Angela Johnson. Yeah,
Yes.
that's her husband. Well, they're both believers, and they were in that movie Mom's Night Out. So I had started following them a long time ago. So he's asking questions about podcasting. And I had just started my podcast a few months before. And so I noticed his comments were open. So I just started chatting with him. And I was like, hey, here's what I use for my podcast. I'm still kind of new, but blah, blah, blah. Anyways, I gave him some value. And before he let me go, he's like, all right, well, thanks so much for your time. And I was like, hey, before I let you go, it's always been a dream of mine to have you and your wife on my podcast. Would you guys be interested? And he was like, well, she's really busy and I can't speak for her, but I'd be happy to come on. And so he was my first long distance interview as well. So I freaked out and I called my sister and I was like, you got to help me figure out how to do a long distance interview real quick. And I was like, how do I make it look like I know what I'm doing? And I put together a whole email, and I was probably way too complicated for him, but he was gracious and we had a great conversation, and it's still on the show. But beyond Jesus just blessing and dropping someone in your lap, you need to pick people who are about 1 to 2 steps above whatever your exposure status
Right.
is. So
Right.
if you're a top 1% show, you could shoot for a top 0.5 or a top 0.1. Stay in that range, because they'll come down a little bit as far as exposure, but you also need to offer them a lot. So if you've got a great email list, if you've got a great social media following, let them know, if you come on with me, I'm going to be promoting this to this many people on these many platforms, and happy to share your lead magnet, happy to share whatever your new book, whatever. Make it as much of a benefit and advantage to them as possible to be on your show. And those are some of the real essential keys for
Right, right. No, that's good, Jen, because I was thinking about that. I'm like, well, Christian, maybe I should just get to episode 100 and then maybe just start looking for a celebrity. Like, still work on your skills, work on
Mhm.
your craft, get more exposure, and then start working your way up. You know what I mean? Not that I don't think that my podcast is all that. I mean, it is,
Uh-huh.
but you need to
Yeah.
have a little bit of what they say, a little bit of
Sobriety.
clout. So yes, that.
Yeah. Well, okay, listen, you just need to join my podcast network, because I have trainings on all these things that you're asking
I
about.
will.
I've literally taught my students about even where to go to look to find the right people. You can go on raphonic.com/graph, and you can look up your show, and you can see all the shows that people listen to that are also listening to your show. So you have listeners in common with all these other shows. That's who you should start with. Your dream list, look for those guys and say, you know what? We have listeners in common. I figured this out online. I think my audience would love to have you on the show. And so when you want to have people as a guest, that's always a great place to start. When it comes to you being on their show, it helps if you start with having them on yours, and then build a rapport, build trust, and then they're more likely to have you on theirs.
All right. So the last segment of the podcast, it is called Fun with Friends. And so I actually did this segment a
Mhm.
few months ago because I just want to add like an element of just fun,
Uh-huh.
laughter, all that. And so I'm gonna need for you to choose a number between 1 to 4. and just
Oh.
let me know what your number is.
6 was my number. All right, we'll go with 2.
People always go with 2, man.
Okay, fine, do 3. I thought 3 first. Go with 3.
Okay, here we go. It is worship time.
Okay.
Sing a 30-second worship song at the top
Duh.
of your lungs.
Okay, my microphone won't pick it up. It's at the top of my lungs. 30-second microphone. Okay, I'm not gonna do top of my lungs. I'm gonna actually
Okay.
try to sing it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. You're worthy of it all, worthy of it all. For from you are all things,
Hey.
and to you are all things. You deserve the glory. There you go.
Okay. Oh, hey. That was good.
That's been coming from. You're hilarious.
That is good. Okay. I like
I mean,
that.
that's a classic. You can't go wrong with worthy of it all, man.
For sure. For sure. No, you you
You can't
can't.
go.
You got a voice too. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me find out.
I have lived my life feeling like I have to work really hard to be able to sing decent. And so I'm like, Lord, just help. I feel like I spend most of my life, God, help me sing better, help me sing better. But I love to worship, and I do
That's
help lead
cool.
worship at church. So
That's so cool. That's so cool. Well, listen, Jen, it was a privilege and an honor to have you on my podcast. I appreciate you, and I gotta have you on again soon.
yeah, we didn't even talk about hearing God's voice. What the
We
heck?
didn't. We didn't.
We didn't
See,
get there.
we didn't even
We
get
didn't get
there.
there.
But next time we will. And I'm gonna have you back on sometime this summer for
Okay.
sure.
All right. All right.
Thank you so much.
Yes, if you'd like, I have some freebies for your audience if they're
Oh,
interested,
please, yes. Come
especially
on.
for those who are maybe interested in podcasting. So if they go over to javawithjenpodcast.com, they can hit the
Mhm.
tab that says freebies. And I have a few options. Now, if they're faith based, there's like a New Year's planner. I know it's not New Year's anymore, but if you're a goal setter, you can do this. It's to guide you through doing it with the Holy Spirit. It's really fun.
Mhm.
But I've got a 7-step checklist for getting their podcast started. It's kind of like a bird's eye view overview of getting it started, growing and monetizing. It's very it's just a quick glance, but it gives you kind of a roadmap to follow. I've also got a training on there. It's a podcast training, 5 things you must know to have a successful show. And so there's other stuff on there, but if they just go to javawithjenpodcast.com, they will find it.
Awesome. Wow. Cool. I'm excited. Well, listen, Jen, it was once again great chatting with you. And I will, of course, link your website, all of your socials in the comment section below. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds great.
for
Thanks
sure.
so much for having me. It was
Of
fun.
course. Absolutely. Have a good one.
You
And to all of the people that are listening, all the viewers, thank you for tuning into the Barr Friends podcast featuring my good friend, Jen. And she'll be back sometime soon. And yes, until now, see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.